colony was quiet that evening, the twin suns dipping behind the metal spires of the human settlement. A faint hum of machinery filled the air, but it could not cover the sudden crash in the distance. The sound echoed like a warning, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. From the shadows, a battered shuttle skidded across the rocky ground, sparks flying from damaged panels. Smoke curled into the darkening sky, and a small figure stumbled out, dragging a child behind her. Her movements were awkward, almost desperate, and her clothes were torn, stained with marks that looked like burns. The child clung to her side, small and trembling, eyes wide and filled with fear. She looked at the human settlement, the walls towering and bright against the dying light. Her lips quivered as she whispered something under her breath, words that were not human. Then she took a deep breath, gathering courage, and started walking toward the nearest building. The humans inside noticed her, some stepping back in fear, some curious. She reached the door of a modest home, knocking lightly, almost nervously. The sound was soft but urgent, a desperate plea hidden in the small taps. A human man opened the door, startled to see her, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon. She raised her hands slowly, showing she carried nothing dangerous. "Please," she said in broken English, her voice trembling but firm. "Just feed my daughter, and I will stay quiet." The human hesitated, eyes narrowing as he studied her, unsure if this was a trick or a real plea. The child peeked from behind her leg, small hands gripping her mother's torn clothing. There was something in her eyes, a mix of fear, hope, and exhaustion, that made him pause. No alien he had seen before looked like this. She was different, fragile, yet strong in a quiet way. The man stepped back, gesturing her inside, curiosity and caution mixing in his mind. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the smell of cooked food, but also a strange tension. The woman's eyes scanned the room quickly, noting every exit, every possible danger. Her daughter clung to her, whispering softly, and she crouched to soothe the child. "I'll stay quiet," she repeated, her voice low, almost a promise to herself. The human watched silently, noticing the scars along her arms and neck. He wondered what kind of life she had led to end up here, alone in an unfamiliar world. She didn't look like a fighter, but there was a quiet resilience in the way she held herself. She prepared a small meal with whatever scraps the man had, moving carefully, almost ritualistically. The child ate quietly, eyes flicking to the human, then back to her mother. The human tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He wanted to ask who she was, where she came from, but the questions felt dangerous. Outside, the wind howled softly, carrying a faint metallic scent, a reminder that danger might follow her. Yet she moved with a purpose, not fear, setting down the dishes and smiling faintly at the child. It was a simple moment, yet full of tension, as if the calm was only temporary. Night fell, and the shadows stretched across the room, the stars visible through the small windows. The woman tucked her daughter into a makeshift bed, brushing her hair gently, humming in her alien tongue. The human watched, feeling a strange pull, a mixture of compassion and curiosity. He realized she was not here by choice, that something terrible had forced her to take this risk. There was a story in her eyes, a history of survival, pain, and loss. He had never met someone like her, an alien mother willing to risk everything for her child. The hum of machines outside could not drown out the silence between them, thick with unspoken questions. Hours passed. And the human could not sleep, thinking about the woman and her child. He wondered who had sent them, or if anyone would come looking. The woman sat by the door, watching the stars, her eyes distant but alert. She whispered to her daughter, soft words of comfort and hope, a promise of safety. The man realized that this was no ordinary encounter, that fate had brought them together for a reason. Something in the air felt charged, as if the galaxy itself was watching, and in that quiet moment, he understood that the first step of their story had begun, a story of trust, survival, and something more. As the first light of dawn touched the colony, the woman and her daughter rested, but the human remained awake, aware that danger might come at any moment, and he knew that whatever happened next, the stranger at the door had changed his life forever. The morning light filtered through the small windows, casting a pale glow across the modest home. The woman had already risen, her movements quiet but deliberate, tending to the small tasks that kept them alive. Her daughter still slept, curled up under a thin blanket, breathing softly and unaware of the dangers outside. The human watched her from across the room, noticing how careful she was, how every gesture seemed measured. It was not fear that guided her, but a strange discipline, a focus born from experience. She cleaned the kitchen, her hands moving with precision, washing dishes and wiping surfaces. Even the simplest chores seemed to carry weight, as if each act was a promise to survive. The human cleared his throat, trying to break the silence. "Who are you running from?" he asked. She paused, glancing at him, eyes guarded but honest. People. Dangerous people, she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. She did not explain further, but her tone carried urgency, a warning that they could be found at any moment. He nodded slowly, understanding that pressing her for details could put them all at risk. Instead, he offered food for her daughter, and she accepted with a small, grateful nod. The smell of the breakfast she prepared filled the room, strange to him, but comforting in a way he could not describe. Days passed in a fragile routine, the human providing shelter and supplies while she cooked and cared for her child. She moved like a shadow, quiet, careful, never drawing attention to herself, yet her presence was impossible to ignore, her determination and focus creating an invisible tension. Neighbors occasionally glanced toward the home, curiosity flickering in their eyes, whispers following in her wake. The human noticed the cautious way she observed every sound outside, every shift in the wind. It became clear that the quiet bargain she offered, safety in exchange for trust, was fragile and temporary. And yet, he felt drawn to her story, the hidden strength beneath her silence. One afternoon, the woman prepared a strange dish, the aroma rich and unfamiliar. The child watched eagerly, fascinated by the alien foods, trying to imitate her mother's movements. The human sat nearby, observing, and felt an odd warmth in the room, a sense of family beginning to form, yet the air carried tension, a subtle warning that the past had not let her go. Her eyes occasionally flicked to the doorway, then to the horizon beyond the walls. He realized that every calm moment was precious, and every second could be broken by forces beyond their control. That evening, she spoke quietly to her daughter, words he did not understand but could feel in their meaning. The child responded with laughter, a sound that filled the small home with life and hope. The human noticed the small, almost hidden smile on her face, a brief moment of peace. He wondered how someone so strong could also be so fragile, how survival and love could coexist so perfectly. The shadows lengthened across the walls, and he felt the weight of unspoken danger pressing closer, yet she did not seem afraid of him, only cautious of the unknown that lurked beyond the door. Night fell, bringing with it a strange quiet, broken only by the hum of distant machinery and the wind through the settlement. The woman sat close to her daughter, brushing her hair and whispering soft words of comfort. The human could not sleep, alert to every sound, watching her silently as she cared for the child. There was something magnetic in her calm determination, a pull that made him want to protect them both. Yet he knew he could not understand her fully. The experiences she carried were alien and heavy. And still, she trusted him, placing herself and her child in his care. It was a trust that could be broken in an instant, but also a bond that promised something greater. Suddenly, a faint noise from outside made both of them freeze, the child stirring in her sleep. The woman's eyes widened, alert and sharp, scanning the darkness for any sign of threat. The human reached for a nearby tool, heart pounding, realizing that her warnings were not empty. The moment passed, the sound fading into the wind, but the tension lingered. They both understood that danger could arrive at any moment, unannounced and unstoppable. And in that quiet understanding, a strange connection grew between them, silent but undeniable. It was not just survival that tied them together, but a fragile hope, a possibility that they could face the galaxy together. As the first light of the next day approached, the human felt a shift in the air, a sense that the quiet bargain they shared had deeper meaning. He realized that this woman, this stranger at his door, was no ordinary alien. She carried strength, intelligence, and a will to protect that matched anything he had seen in the galaxy. And her child, innocent and trusting, made the stakes clear. They were fighting for more than life. They were fighting for a future that could only exist if they survived together. The human watched her prepare for the day, silently promising that he would protect them. And in that silent promise, the first true bond between them formed, fragile, unspoken, but real. The days grew longer, and the colony seemed calmer, but the woman's eyes never lost their alertness. She moved through the small home like a shadow, quiet and precise, always watching, always calculating. Her daughter laughed and played, unaware of the storm that had followed them from the stars. The human noticed every scar on her arms and neck, marks that told stories of battles he could not imagine. He often wondered what kind of life had forced her into this desperate journey, and although she spoke little, the weight of her past was visible in her careful movements and guarded eyes. One evening, as the twin suns began to set, a strange hum resonated outside the walls. She froze, listening, muscles tense, her eyes sharp and wary. The human noticed the sudden shift, the way her hands clenched slightly, the faint glow in her eyes. "It's them," she whispered to herself, almost too quietly to hear. He stepped closer, alarmed. "Who is coming?" he asked. Her gaze met his, serious and steady. "Hunters," she said. They are looking for us, my daughter and me. He felt a chill creep along his spine, realizing that the danger she had spoken about was real and imminent. The night grew colder, shadows stretching across the walls, as she explained fragments of her past. Her voice was low, cautious, but full of emotion. She had been part of a world far from this colony, a world of conflict, betrayal, and harsh rules. Her people had been ruthless, seeking power and control across many star systems, but she had never wanted that life, never wanted the bloodshed and pain that came with it. She had tried to escape, to find a safe place for her child, but enemies were always close behind. Every choice had been a risk, and now she had come to this human settlement, hoping for sanctuary. The human listened intently, heart pounding as he realized the gravity of her situation. Her story was not just about survival, but about loss, courage, and the sacrifices she had made. She had trusted no one for years, yet somehow she had trusted him, placing her daughter's life in his hands. He felt a strange mix of fear and responsibility, understanding that protecting them was more than a duty. It was a moral choice. The child slept peacefully in the corner, oblivious to the truth of her mother's past. And in that innocence, both humans and alien found motivation, a reason to fight if the hunters ever arrived. Suddenly, a soft noise outside caught their attention, like the hum of a distant engine. The woman's body tensed, and her hand went to the small weapon she kept hidden. The human instinctively grabbed a tool nearby, preparing to defend them both. The shadows outside seemed to move, the light flickering as though warning them of approaching danger. "They are close," she whispered, her voice calm but urgent. He looked at her, seeing the fear she tried to hide behind her quiet strength. It was a reminder that her past was never far behind, always ready to catch up. For the next few hours they prepared silently, fortifying the small home as best as they could. The woman moved with efficiency, checking exits, hiding weapons, and ensuring her daughter was safe. He realized she had fought battles far beyond his imagination, and yet she showed him how to stay calm under pressure. The night stretched endlessly, the wind outside carrying strange metallic scents, warning of the hunter's approach. She whispered to her daughter in her native language, telling stories of survival, hope, and courage. The child's laughter was rare but comforting, a small light in the darkness of their lives. The human felt a strange bond forming between them, trust growing from necessity. But also from shared fear. Hours passed and the hunters did not arrive, yet the tension lingered, thick and unrelenting. The human realized that living with her meant constant vigilance, yet it was impossible not to be drawn to her. Her resilience, intelligence, and maternal devotion created a magnetic presence in the small home. He wondered how someone so fragile in appearance could be so unyielding in spirit. Her past was filled with secrets, pain, and battles, yet she had chosen to protect her child above all else, and in that choice, she had created a bond with him, one built on respect, trust, and the unspoken promise of safety. As dawn approached, the woman finally relaxed slightly, her eyes softening as she watched her daughter sleep. The human watched her, thinking of the journey that had brought them together. He knew their story was just beginning, that the past would not let go so easily. Yet there was hope in the air, fragile but real, and a feeling that together they could face whatever came next. The secrets of her past had been shared in fragments, enough to reveal her strength, courage, and the danger trailing them. But they had also revealed something else, a connection, an understanding that went beyond words. And as the first light of the colony shone on the horizon, he realized that protecting them was no longer a choice, but a calling. Night had fallen over the colony, the twin moons casting long shadows across the walls of the human's home. The woman sat close to her daughter, brushing her hair and whispering soft words in her native tongue. The human paced quietly, listening to the faint hum of machinery outside, aware that every sound could be a warning. For days they had lived in a fragile calm, but he knew danger was never far behind. Her eyes flicked to the windows, sharp and alert, reflecting a readiness he could not ignore. Suddenly, the sensors in the home blared, a sharp, high-pitched warning that echoed through the small building. The woman's body tensed and she moved instinctively, grabbing a small energy blade hidden under the table. Her daughter stirred slightly, sensing the tension, and she whispered comfortingly to the child. The human ran to a nearby control panel, heart pounding, trying to understand what had triggered the alarm. Outside, the shadows shifted, and he could see faint movements, too deliberate to be wind or animals. He realized with a sinking feeling that the hunters from her past had found them, and they were close. The woman did not panic, though her eyes glowed faintly with controlled intensity. She instructed him calmly, "Block the exits, hide the child, be ready to move." Her voice carried authority, a mix of fear and experience that left no room for hesitation. The human followed her directions quickly, moving with a combination of awe and nervousness. He noticed the way she handled the blade, precise and confident, each movement calculated for efficiency. It was clear she had fought countless battles, and now he understood why she had survived this long. The hunters appeared at the edge of the yard, their figures tall and menacing, cloaked in dark armor. The woman moved between them and the child, a protective shield of determination and skill. The human joined her, gripping a tool as best as he could, realizing that his life and theirs depended on this moment. Energy blades hummed, weapons activated, and the air was charged with tension. The hunters advanced cautiously, expecting the woman to be weak, to falter under pressure. But she did not falter, her movements fluid, her focus unbreakable, every strike measured and purposeful. For minutes that felt like hours, the small home became a battlefield. The human followed her lead, shielding the child and using quick reflexes to block minor attacks. She fought with strength he could not have imagined, turning the T. Eyed with speed and precision, even when cornered, she remained calm, analyzing each hunter's movement, anticipating their next strike. Her daughter watched from a hidden corner, eyes wide with fear, yet trusting her mother completely. The human felt a mix of terror and admiration, realizing that her past had made her unstoppable when needed. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the hunters retreated, their figures disappearing into the darkness. The woman lowered her blade slowly, breathing heavily but steadying herself. Her daughter ran to her, wrapping small arms around her waist, and she hugged her tightly, whispering words of reassurance. The human exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body. Though he knew this was only the first encounter, he looked at her, seeing both the strength and vulnerability she carried, and understood the gravity of her past. She had fought countless battles, endured betrayals, and survived because of her determination and love for her child. In the quiet that followed, they checked the home for damage, ensuring that no traces of the hunters remained. The woman's eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, confirming their temporary safety. The human could not stop thinking about the stories she had hinted at, the enemies who would not stop until they were found. He realized that living with her meant constant vigilance, but also that her strength inspired him to be braver. Even the small moments, tidying up, sharing food, comforting the child, were charged with a new sense of purpose. Every glance, every movement, was now layered with the knowledge that danger could return at any moment. That night, they sat together in silence, the child asleep and safe between them. The woman finally allowed herself a brief moment of rest, leaning against the human, trusting him to keep her daughter safe. He watched her, feeling a deep respect and connection, understanding that survival was more than hiding or fighting. It was about trust, courage, and the bonds formed in the crucible of fear and danger. He realized that this night would mark a turning point in their lives, the first real test of their strength and unity. And as the first light of dawn crept across the walls, they both knew that the galaxy outside was vast, dangerous, and full of unknown threats. But together, they were stronger than they had ever imagined, ready to face whatever came next. Days passed, and a fragile routine settled over the small home. The woman moved quietly through the rooms, preparing meals, tidying up, and caring for her daughter with a steady, gentle hand. Her presence filled the space with a strange comfort, a feeling of life and warmth that had been missing for too long. The child laughed more often now, learning words in her mother's alien language, pointing at objects and repeating sounds with innocent delight. The human watched from a corner, fascinated by the small moments, realizing that survival was not only about hiding or fighting, but about these little acts of care. The kitchen was filled with unfamiliar aromas, a mix of alien spices and simple ingredients from the settlement. He observed her carefully, noticing the care in every movement, the way she measured, stirred, and adjusted flavors with instinctive precision. Even though he did not understand all the ingredients, he could see the pride and love in her eyes as she presented the food to her daughter. The child's laughter echoed through the room, small hands clapping in excitement, and the woman's face softened, revealing a rare moment of peace. The human felt a connection growing between them, a bond formed not through words, but through the shared experience of survival, care, and trust. As they ate together, the woman occasionally glanced at the horizon, alert for any sign of danger. He noticed her vigilance, how every sound and shadow seemed to command her attention. Yet despite this constant watchfulness, she allowed herself to enjoy the small moments of normalcy. She taught her daughter simple games, stories, and songs from her world. The child repeated them eagerly, her laughter a bright light in the dim home. The human realized that through this bonding, they were creating a small sanctuary in the midst of a galaxy that offered little safety. Evening brought quiet conversations. Whispered in broken English and her alien tongue, the human began to learn fragments of her story, understanding the sacrifices she had made to protect her child. Every detail she shared was measured, cautious, yet filled with emotion and weight. He realized that she had carried this burden alone for a long time, and now, slowly, she was allowing someone else to share the responsibility. The bond between them grew stronger, forged not in words but in the simple, profound acts of caring for the child and each other. One afternoon, the human tried helping in the kitchen, clumsily chopping ingredients and spilling sauces. The woman watched with a small smile, correcting him patiently, her hands guiding his movements with care. The child giggled at their mistakes, clapping and cheering, creating a rare and joyful moment. He laughed despite himself, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the food or the house. It was the warmth of trust, of connection, and of hope that the small family could survive and even thrive together. Yet beneath the calm, the tension of their past dangers remained, a shadow that could not be ignored. The woman taught the human small precautions, how to hide the child, how to secure the home. Every action carried meaning, a lesson born from experience and necessity. The human realized that these routines, simple as they seemed, were their shield against the galaxy outside, and he admired her more each day, not only for her strength in combat, but for her ability to nurture and protect with unwavering devotion. Night fell, and they gathered around a small hearth, the daughter asleep in her mother's arms. The woman hummed a soft, melodic tune from her world, the sound filling the room with peace and familiarity. The human felt a strange calm, understanding that moments like these were rare and precious. It was in these moments that he saw the depth of her character, the balance of strength and gentleness, courage and care. He realized that their bond was no longer just about survival, but about trust, family, and the possibility of a future together. Outside, the stars shimmered in the clear night sky, the galaxy vast and dangerous, yet within the small home, a quiet sense of safety and connection prevailed. The human reflected on how much had changed in so little time. A stranger had arrived at his door, desperate and frightened, and now she had become part of his life. Her courage, care, and love for her child had created something extraordinary, and he knew that whatever dangers awaited them, they would face them together, stronger than before. For in the quiet rhythm of cooking, caring, and bonding, they had found more than safety. They had found trust, hope, and a fragile, unbreakable family. The night was unusually quiet, the stars sparkling brightly over the colony. Inside the small home, the woman sat close to her daughter, brushing her hair with delicate, careful movements. The child yawned and stretched, her small body relaxed in her mother's arms, unaware of the dangers that had followed them. The human stood nearby, watching silently, noticing the weight of responsibility in her every motion. For days, they had survived the hunters, faced dangers, and built a fragile bond. Yet tonight, something in her eyes told him that she carried more than fear. She carried a burden of hope and desperation. She finally spoke, her voice low and trembling. "I will do anything to keep her safe," she whispered. Her eyes searched his face, filled with pleading, a silent vulnerability he had not seen before. "I will stay. I will work. I will stay in your bed if I must. Please, just protect her," she begged. The words hung in the air, heavy with emotion and meaning. He felt his heart tighten, torn between suspicion, responsibility, and an overwhelming desire to help. It was not just a request for shelter or safety. It was a plea for trust, for understanding, and for protection against a galaxy that would not forgive weakness. The child stirred slightly, sensing the tension, and she clutched her mother's arm. The woman hugged her tightly, whispering promises in her alien tongue. The human realized that this mother had survived unimaginable hardships for this small being. Every scar, every tired movement, every careful glance told a story of sacrifice and love. He felt awe and respect, realizing that no training, no battle, no weapon could match the courage she carried in her heart. Tears welled in her eyes as she continued, "I have no one else, nowhere else to run." Her voice shook, and for a moment the strong, confident woman seemed small and fragile. He stepped closer, his instincts telling him to protect them both. "I will do everything I can," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your daughter will be safe." She nodded slowly, relief washing over her face, though fear lingered in her eyes. The bond between them deepened in that moment, born from trust, desperation, and mutual understanding. Outside, the wind carried faint echoes, shadows shifting across the walls. The woman's hands tightened around her child as though she could physically shield her from the world. She whispered stories of her past in fragments, not wanting to reveal too much, but enough to explain her urgency. She had survived betrayals, attacks, and endless pursuit, all to protect her child. Her voice trembled as she spoke of the nights she had wandered, hiding from hunters, of the moments she had prayed for safety, and of the times she had faced despair and loss. Through it all, her love for her daughter had remained her guiding force, stronger than fear or pain. The human listened intently, heart heavy with empathy, realizing that her plea was not manipulation, but a raw, honest expression of her will to survive. He felt a deep responsibility forming inside him, a moral certainty that he could not ignore. The child stirred again, reaching out for him unconsciously, and he knelt beside her, smiling gently. The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, a small, genuine smile appeared. It was a fragile moment, fleeting yet powerful, a promise that even in the galaxy's darkness, trust and love could exist. Hours passed, and the hunters did not appear, yet the tension never fully left the room. The woman continued to whisper to her daughter, her words filled with hope and reassurance. The human realized that her strength was not just in combat or survival, but in the ability to nurture and protect in the face of overwhelming odds. He thought about how much had changed since she first knocked on his door, desperate and pleading. Now, her plea had become a quiet declaration of trust, binding them together in an unspoken agreement. They were no longer strangers, but allies, protectors, and perhaps something more. As dawn approached, the woman finally allowed herself to rest, her daughter safely in her arms. The human watched her, aware of the weight of her past, the dangers lurking outside, and the bond that had formed between them. He knew that her plea had changed everything, that their lives were now intertwined in ways neither could undo. And in that quiet, fragile moment, he made a silent vow to protect them both, whatever the galaxy might throw their way. The emotional plea had done more than seek safety. It had forged trust, deepened connection, and laid the foundation for the next chapter of their story. In the quiet desperation of a mother's words, the human understood the true power of love, sacrifice, and courage, and he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger than any threat, united by trust and hope. The first light of dawn painted the colony in pale gold, casting long shadows across the walls of the small home. The woman sat quietly with her daughter, brushing the child's hair with gentle, precise movements. The human watched them, sensing the calm before the storm, knowing that the hunters might return at any moment. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him, but also the strength that had grown between them over the days. This morning felt different, charged with a tension that neither fear nor hope could fully describe. Suddenly, a sharp noise came from outside, the hum of engines and the metallic scrape of armor on the rocky ground. The hunters had returned, faster and more organized than before, their intentions clear and dangerous. The woman's eyes widened, but her movements remained calm and deliberate. She whispered to her daughter, "Stay here, stay quiet, trust him." And the child nodded, understanding only in the language of instinct. The human grabbed a makeshift weapon, adrenaline surging, heart pounding as he realized this was the final test. Every plan, every precaution, every lesson from the past days had led to this moment. The hunters approached the door, scanning the perimeter, unaware of the clever traps the woman had set. She stood with quiet determination, energy blade in hand, her presence commanding and fierce. The human joined her side, ready to defend them both, his fear tempered by the strange courage that her strength inspired. The first hunter reached the doorway, and she struck with precision, a flash of movement that sent him sprawling. The others reacted quickly, but she was faster, weaving and striking with a rhythm honed by years of survival. He followed her lead, blocking, striking, and using quick improvisation to keep the child safe. Minutes stretched like hours, every moment a battle of skill and nerve. The hunters pressed forward, relentless, but the woman anticipated their moves, guiding the human with subtle gestures. Together, they formed an unbreakable team, trust flowing silently between them. She fought not just for herself, but for her daughter, for the life they were trying to build, and for the human who had become their ally. Every clash of blades, every flash of light, was a testament to her determination and the bond they had forged. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the hunters began to falter, retreating into the shadows from which they had come. The woman lowered her blade slowly, breathing heavily but steadying herself. The human checked on the child, holding her close and whispering words of comfort. Relief washed over them, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the galaxy beyond was still dangerous. They had survived this attack, but survival was only the beginning, a step toward building a future together. In the quiet aftermath, the three of them sat together, the child between them. The woman smiled softly, a rare and genuine moment, and the human felt a warmth that went beyond relief. They shared a quiet understanding. Their lives were forever changed, bound together by trust, courage, and shared struggle. She spoke softly to her daughter, telling her that they were safe for now, that they had won this battle. The human realized that her bravery was not only in combat, but in the choice to trust him, to risk everything on hope. Later, as the day warmed, they made small repairs to the home, strengthening walls and securing the doors. The woman moved with purpose, showing him the care and attention needed to survive in this hostile galaxy. He learned from her, adopting her methods, understanding that survival required not just strength, but intelligence and foresight. Even in the calm, he remained alert, aware that threats could appear at any moment. Yet the bond between them made the danger bearable, their trust giving them courage and a sense of family. By evening, they had created a small sanctuary, a place of fragile safety and hope. The woman prepared a meal for her daughter, the smells filling the home with comfort and warmth. The human watched, realizing that this simple act was as important as any battle they had fought. It symbolized trust, stability, and the possibility of a future beyond fear. He saw in her eyes a mixture of relief, gratitude, and cautious optimism, and he knew they had earned this moment together. As night fell, the three of them sat near the small hearth, stars shining brightly through the windows. The woman whispered stories of her past, not all dark, some filled with lessons, hope, and distant worlds. The human listened, feeling the bond deepen, understanding that the choices they had made had forged more than safety. They had created a family. The galaxy outside remained vast and full of unknown dangers, but inside, they had trust, courage, and love, the foundation for a future they would face together. And in that quiet, fragile moment, the human realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would survive, thrive, and continue their journey, united as one.